Hello. Welcome to TEA's Federal Fiscal Compliance and Reporting's Division presentation on the SF fiscal requirements for Title I Part A, Comparability of Services. This presentation will specifically review the reporting and documenting of instructional staff FTEs. The presentation is based on the viewer being familiar with the comparability requirement and having viewed the Title I Part A Comparability of Services overview presentation. So let's begin.
This is the standard TEA disclaimer. It explains that this presentation is intended solely to provide general information and guidance to LEAs. It reflects TEA's current understanding of the applicable federal guidance, and it does not constitute legal advice.
Based on last year's validation review of LEA comparability documentation, TEA has identified some common issues which are occurring among LEAs, and we believe additional clarification is needed on these items. For the most part, LEAs are applying the Comparability Computation Form guidance correctly in regards to such items as grade span groups, high and low enrollment splits, and other items. The issues identified are not occurring within how the LEAs are conducting their testing. Rather, the issues are occurring within the data that LEAs are using in the comparability calculations. One common issue across all data is the source of the data. The fiscal requirements for the comparability requirement are federal law. Because the consequence of non-compliance with the comparability requirement is the return of all Title I Part A funds for the fiscal year, TEA collects the comparability data during the fiscal year under review. This allows for any non-compliant campuses to be brought into compliance with the requirement. LEAs are required to test for compliance using current year budget data. The term expenditures is used, but because the requirement is tested during the current year, LEAs must report budget data where applicable. Because LEAs are required to test for compliance using current year budget data, the LEA should not report the previous year's data or the current year's total expenditures to date. For example, for school year 17-18, LEAs should report the 17-18 enrollments, the 17-18 state and local budget amounts, the state and local FTEs, etc. Non-federally funded instructional staff FTEs. There are 6 common issues when reporting non-federally funded instructional staff FTEs per pupil. The first 3 are not excluding FTEs paid with federal funds, not excluding FTEs paid with supplemental state and local dollars, and finally not excluding FTEs paid with supplemental state and local dollars consistently. The remaining 3 common issues when reporting non-federally funded instructional staff FTEs are reporting staff counts instead of FTEs, not including all FTEs that are considered instructional staff FTEs, and not having auditable documentation to support the reported non-federally funded instructional staff FTEs. Success tip for reporting non-federally funded instructional staff FTEs. Exclude federal funds. No FTEs or portions of FTEs paid with federal funds can be included in non-federally funded instructional staff FTEs. In the Comparability Instructions Appendix 2, codes used in the comparability calculation, you can find a list of all roll IDs that should normally be included in the calculation. This list is applicable to the non-federally funded instructional staff FTEs that are reported. The comparability instructions can be found on TEA's Title I Part A Comparability of Services webpage. Success tip for reporting non-federally funded instructional staff FTEs. Exclude FTEs paid with supplemental state and local dollars. Public Law 115-64, Section 1118 Fiscal requirements D. Exclusion of funds state that an LEA may exclude supplemental state and local dollars. This statement applies to FTEs paid with supplemental state and local dollars. It is not a requirement to exclude the FTEs paid with supplemental dollars. However, excluding FTEs paid with supplemental dollars creates a more accurate picture of the LEA's campuses, making it easier to come into compliance with the testing requirement. Certain services are meant for specific students. Thus, FTEs paid with supplemental state and local dollar expenditures can vary from campus to campus based on student population. Excluding the FTEs paid with supplemental dollars can be critical when coming into compliance with the testing requirement, especially if the number of FTEs paid with supplemental dollars varies greatly from campus to campus. If an LEA chooses to exclude non-federally funded instructional staff FTEs paid with supplemental state and local dollars, it must do so consistently across the LEA. Appendix 2 of the Title I Part A Comparability of Services Handbook provides further information on supplemental state and local fund expenditures that may be excluded from the comparability testing. Thus, an LEA may exclude FTEs paid with supplemental state and local funds for the following special programs: language instruction educational programs such as bilingual education for children with limited English proficiency, English as a second language ESL services, excess state and local costs of providing services to children with disabilities as determined by the LEA, state or local supplemental programs in any school attendance area or school meeting the intent and purpose of Title I Part A. Success tip for reporting non-federally funded instructional staff FTEs. Exclude FTEs paid with supplemental state and local dollars consistently. If an LEA excludes FTEs paid with supplemental state and local dollars from one campus's total of non-federally funded instructional staff FTEs, it must exclude the same FTEs from all campuses' non-federally funded instructional staff FTEs. All campuses, all grade span groups. There is not flexibility with this requirement. Success tip for reporting non-federally funded instructional staff FTEs. Report FTEs accurately. FTE is an acronym for full-time equivalent. An FTE count is not the same as staff count. An LEA can have 10 staff members, which may equate to 5 FTEs if each is half-time only. LEAs are required to report non-federally funded instructional staff FTEs, not non-federally funded instructional staff counts. There is no flexibility with this requirement. For FTEs funded through both federal and state and local funds, or supplemental state and local funds and non-supplemental state and local funds, the portion of the FTE considered non-supplemental state and local funded should be calculated and reported in only that portion of the FTE. Per the Public Education Information Management System, PEIMS, data standards, the full-time equivalency of non-federally funded instructional staff members is calculated as illustrated in the examples on the following slides. Example 1. If a staff member is employed for at least 187 days, which is considered to be full-time by the Texas Education Code, the FTE is calculated by determining the percent of the day spent teaching classes paid with state and local funds and then dividing the number by 100. In this example, a teacher is employed for 190 days, and the teacher teaches 2 classes paid with Title I Part A funds and 4 classes paid with state and local funds in a 6-period day. The 4 classes paid with state and local funds make up 67% of the day, and 67 divided by 100 is 0.67. The non-federal FTE for this teacher is 0.67. Example 2. If a staff member is employed for less than 187 days, the FTE is calculated by determining the percent of the day spent teaching classes paid with state and local funds, dividing the number by 100, multiplying the result by the number of days employed, and then dividing by the number 187. And there is an example of the formula. In this example, a teacher is employed for 175 days and teaches 2 classes paid with Title I Part A funds and 4 regular classes in a 6-period day. The 4 classes paid with state and local funds make up 67% of the day, and 67 divided by 100 is 0.67. The result is multiplied by 175 and is 117.25, which then divided by 187 is 0.63. The non-federal FTE for this teacher is 0.63. Success tip when reporting non-federally funded instructional staff FTEs. Report FTEs considered instructional staff. Per USDE non-regulatory guidance on Title I fiscal issues, May 2006, if an LEA chooses to measure compliance by comparing student/staff ratios or student/staff salary ratios, the LEA should consistently include the same categories of staff members in the ratio for both Title I and non-Title I schools. Instructional staff may include teachers and other personnel assigned to schools who provide direct instructional services, such as music, art, and physical education teachers, guidance counselors, speech therapists, and librarians, as well as other personnel who provide services which support instruction, such as school social workers and psychologists. So, instructional staff refers to numerous categories of personnel and does not mean teachers only. All non-federal positions which provide direct instructional services and or services that support instruction should be included, unless paid with supplemental state and local dollars. Refer to Appendix 2 of the Comparability Instructions for a list of role IDs considered instructional staff. Staff coded as instruction, instructional leadership, or instructional support should be included as instructional. Success tip when reporting non-federally funded instructional staff FTEs. Have auditable documentation to support the reported FTEs. Because comparability is a federal requirement, the information reported must be supported by auditable documentation. Official records are the only records considered auditable documentation. FTE documentation can vary from LEA to LEA. The LEA has discretion as to the documentation to use. However, the documentation must be considered official documentation and be supported through official records. Auditable documentation includes the following: reports from the LEA's accounting system indicating the FTEs by fund, function, and organizational codes. These reports can be in PDF format. Any other official document which reflects approval by the Board of Trustees and or the superintendent. So, an Excel spreadsheet with the employees' names and FTE count is not considered auditable documentation. However, a data export from the LEA's accounting system into Excel with the appropriate notations is considered auditable documentation. All exported data will have these notations indicating the scope of the data and the system from which it was originated. These are not notations a staff member would make to the spreadsheet. They are part of the exported data. Success tip for reporting non-federally funded instructional staff FTEs. A suggested methodology It is recommended that the LEA use official financial accounting system records or PEAMS records. For the state and local FTEs being reported, obtain the necessary FTE reports for all campuses by fund, function, and org codes from your financial accounting system. Exclude any FTEs or portion of FTEs paid with federal funds. Exclude any FTEs or portion of FTEs paid with supplemental state and local dollars. If FTEs or portion of FTEs paid with supplemental state and local dollars are excluded, detail which FTEs paid with supplemental dollars have been excluded. Have documentation of the excluded amounts. Arrive at a reduced FTE total to be reported. Provide the math used to arrive at the reported FTE totals. For example, if 10 FTEs were deducted for being funded with supplemental state and local dollars, show your math on your documentation and detail how the new total was achieved. All adjustments made to the original FTE totals must be itemized. The original FTE totals, the same totals as indicated on the original FTE report, any adjustments noted, and the final FTE totals reported must be made transparent in the supporting documentation. Keep all documents which support the non-federally funded instructional staff FTEs being reported as per your LEA's record retention schedule. TEA does request this documentation from LEAs on a random basis. This concludes our presentation. Should you have questions about this information, please email or call us. One of our team members will be happy to assist you. Thank you. These materials are copyrighted and trademarked as the property of the Texas Education Agency and may not be reproduced without the express written permission of TEA, except under the following conditions listed in this slide. For further information, please contact us at the email below.